Caroline had always been good at routines. That Monday morning, I watched her move through the kitchen with the same grace she'd always had, pouring coffee, checking her phone, reminding the kids about their lunchboxes. Normal, reassuring. If you'd seen her, you'd think she was just a tired, loving wife juggling life. But you don't start wearing armor unless you've already been wounded. A week earlier, I found a foil pill backing on the bathroom carpet. It caught the morning light just right. One of those metallic specks your eyes dismiss until they don't. I picked it up and flipped it over. A single word, Tuesday. That would have been yesterday. Only problem? Neither of us took medication. And after my vasectomy 2 years ago, birth control should have been history. Caroline never needed it for hormonal issues, and we both had a clean bill of health. So why the pills? I didn't ask. Not right away. Asking without proof is like charging into a minefield. Instead, I looked. Found the rest of the pill strip hidden beneath tampons in the bathroom cabinet. Carefully concealed, but not cleverly enough. And just like that, the thread began to unravel. I started taking precautions. Ordered surveillance gear to cover the house. Voice recorders for her car and purse, and cloned her phone. I didn't expect to find much. She was smart. Methodical. If she was cheating, she wasn't sloppy about it. But people make mistakes when they get comfortable. Friday, the packages arrived. I installed everything, then waited. A few days passed, ordinary as ever. Routine. Sex once or twice on the weekend. Nothing to raise alarms until Monday morning. She left for work as usual, and I retrieved the footage. The cameras told a different story. Saturday evening. I was cooking dinner. Caroline showered in our bedroom bathroom, alone, or so I thought. On the footage, I watched her retrieve a second phone from a vent behind the bathroom fan. Not the phone in her bag. This one was hidden. Private. She texted someone quickly, looking almost giddy. Like a teenager with a crush. I didn't need to see the messages to know what that was. Later, I retrieved and cloned the hidden phone. That's when the dam broke. The messages? Explicit. Affectionate. Routine. She'd been seeing someone for months. Maybe longer. Every message was time-stamped with crazy day at work or so tired tonight. Excuses I'd swallow without question. And her partner? A subordinate. One of her junior team members. The irony? She'd always made a point to say how professional she kept things at the office. How inappropriate other women were, blurring lines. Turns out, lines were her specialty. Drawing them when it suited her. Crossing them when no one was looking. What hit hardest wasn't the sex. Though those messages were detailed enough to be surgical. It was the tone, the care, the emotional intimacy. It wasn't just physical. She cared about him. Enough to lie. Enough to deceive. Enough to stash birth control and a burner phone like a spy on a mission. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I kept playing the part. Loving husband. Dutiful father. Smiling, nodding, and kissing her cheek goodnight while my brain ran calculations in the background. Revenge? Divorce? Exposure? I didn't know yet. But I knew this. She thought I was in the dark. And that was going to be her biggest mistake. Tuesday came and went. Caroline kissed me on the cheek as she left for work. Her lips still soft. Her eyes still bright. She was humming like a woman who had it all under control. That's when I knew. She didn't just think I didn't know. She believed I never could know. That I was too trusting, too predictable. Comfortable in my little husband bubble, tucked between PDA meetings and water heater repairs. She had no idea the game had changed. That afternoon, I installed the second round of surveillance. This time in her office. Well, outside her office. The cameras were small, battery-powered, disguised in everyday objects. I had a friend in tech who owed me a favor. Now, he was my eyes in the workplace. Caroline ruled like a queen. I also tracked the second phone. Real-time GPS, thanks to the cloning software. The lover's name was still hidden. Just a save initial. M. That was his moniker. No photos. No social media trail. He was smart, I'll give him that. But not smart enough. Wednesday evening, she came home late. Things got so crazy, she said, dumping her bag by the door. I'm just exhausted, babe. You okay doing bedtime tonight? Exhausted, right? I said yes. Of course. Why wouldn't I? I tucked the kids in, read the same story twice, then retreated to my office. Closed the door. Reviewed the day's data. The camera near her office caught something. 3:22 p.m., Caroline, leaving with a young man in a slate gray shirt. Slim, clean-shaven, maybe mid to late 20s. He didn't look like a threat. He looked like a boy. The kind of guy who says things like, vibe check, and listens to synthwave playlists on Spotify. They got in the same car, her car, and drove to a residential building across town. They entered. 48 minutes later, she emerged alone. Hair tousled, smile wiped clean. She got back to the office in time for a 5 p.m. all-hands meeting. She didn't say a word about it that night. Of course not. She never did. The lies weren't just spoken. They were embedded in her silences, in the way she said nothing when something screamed to be said. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the betrayal. I'd made peace with that. No, what kept me awake was the realization that this was calculated. Her meetings, her tiredness, her mental load, all of it was a smokescreen. She was living a double life with surgical precision, and I'd been the one holding the scalpel for her. By Friday, I had a name. Mason Delaney, age 27, junior marketing associate. Caroline had fought to get him hired 2 years ago. Said he was hungry and brilliant, a real go-getter. Apparently, he was a go-get-her, too. I call in a background check. Nothing major came up. Clean record. Small apartment. No spouse, no kids. Barely scraped by on his salary. And something caught my eye. 6 months ago, Caroline approved a raise for him. Quiet. Off-cycle. Not documented in the main budget report I'd once helped her proofread. But there it was, tucked in the appendix of the board's minutes. She'd been funding her affair, using her authority to cushion his life, to make sure he could afford the hotel rooms and discreet lunches. This wasn't just infidelity. It was embezzlement of trust, a high-functioning betrayal. She never meant to leave me. No, that's the genius of it. She wanted everything. The house, the kids, the stable husband with benefits, and an emotional support role, and the thrill of being someone else, even just for an hour in the middle of the day. She told him things in those texts that she hadn't told me in years, about how she used to feel alive, how she missed being touched like she mattered, how I was sweet but safe, too safe. Mason made her feel dangerous, like a woman again. And me? I was the insurance policy, the security deposit, the man who didn't ask questions as long as dinner was on the table and the kids stayed happy. Until I did ask, but not out loud, not yet, because I had a bigger question brewing. If she was willing to risk everything for him, was she also stupid enough to leave a trail? I started checking our finances, real estate records, company reimbursement statements, anything in her name that fell off. And then I found it. A rental property, leased in her maiden name, paid for quarterly, located exactly halfway between her office and his apartment. A place she never mentioned. A place with one queen bed, a stocked fridge, and a 24-hour door code. They'd build a nest. That's when I stopped feeling heartbroken and started feeling hungry. Funny how betrayal sharpens your senses. I could hear Caroline's lies now. The inflection when she said, "I'm just wiped," the subtle pause before, "We had back-to-back meetings." I'd heard those words 100 times before. They used to sound normal. That weekend, I drove out to the address where her secret little pied a terre was located. A quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. Mid-century townhouses with fresh paint and Amazon packages by the door. You could walk a dog there, raise a kid, have an affair. I parked a block away. Walked past casually with my sunglasses on, hoodie up. House number 418. Clean brick. No lights on. I noted the model of the smart lock on the door. I'd dealt with this exact brand at work. Weak encryption if you knew what you were doing. I did. By Monday morning, I had the door code. Access from a cloned app on her secret phone. The PIN, Mason's birth year, 1997. She picked the year he was born as the entry code to their little hideaway. That detail sat in my stomach like a stone. I waited until Wednesday, her late work night. She said she had an off-site with the leadership team, dinner afterward. I knew better. At 6:43 p.m., her tracker blipped alive. She was moving. 10 minutes later, she parked at the townhouse. Mason's phone, also tracked via a cloned app, pinged from the same location. They were both there. Right now. I parked again, same spot. Hoodie up. I walked, but this time I didn't stop. I didn't hesitate. I opened the door. The air inside smelled like perfume and cheap wine. A throw blanket was slung across the couch. Two half-empty glasses on a coffee table. A laptop open to Spotify, some moody indie playlist playing low. I heard movement upstairs. Laughter. I didn't go up. Instead, I walked around. Noticed the pictures. None of me, none of the kids. Just abstract art and one photo of them on the beach. Her in sunglasses. Him shirtless, kissing her neck. That smile, she never smiled like that with me anymore. I didn't touch anything. That would be emotional. Messy. Instead, I planted a bug. Small microphone beneath the couch. Another in the vent. I replaced the light bulb in the hallway with one that had a pinhole camera inside. I took pictures. Inventory of every room. And I left. Slipped out like a ghost. Unheard, unseen. She'd never know I was there until I wanted her to. Back home, I made dinner for the kids. Helped with homework. Caroline texted around 9:15. Running late. I'll shower when I get in. Love you. Shower. Of course. Wash off the boy. She came home at 9:41. Kissed my cheek. Smelled like lavender and sin. Good day. I asked. Exhausting, she sighed. Things got so crazy. I nodded. Why are you smiling? She asked. No reason. That night, I reviewed the audio feed. Heard everything. She liked being on top. He called her Caro. She whispered she missed him. Said I'd been acting a little off, but that she was managing it. That she'd handled worse. She didn't know I was the one holding the reins now. What burned wasn't the sex. It was the closeness. She told him about my habits, my weaknesses, my fears. She made me small in that space so she could feel big. But what she didn't realize was I'd already started making her smaller. Thursday morning, I visited my attorney. Laid it all out. The burner phone, the financials, the love nest, the raise, the audio. He blinked once, twice, and said, You're building a hell of a case. Do you want to go nuclear? I didn't hesitate. Yes. We discussed strategy, divorce under fault-based grounds using adultery, potential civil suits for misuse of corporate funds, the prenup loophole we'd buried in the fine print. I could take the kids, the house, and her reputation, and leave her with Mason and a lease she couldn't afford. But that wasn't quite enough. See, this wasn't about punishment. It was about precision. I didn't want just justice. I wanted impact. And for that, I needed the final ingredient, fear. There's a moment in every good plan where you pause, not because you're second-guessing, but because you realize how far you've come from the man you were. A month ago, I was a husband. Now, I was an architect of quiet destruction, and I had the blueprints nearly finished. After meeting with my attorney, I stopped by Caroline's office building. Not to confront her. Not yet. Just to watch. She stood outside around noon with a paper cup in hand, chatting with Mason. They kept a subtle distance, enough to look professional to a stranger. But once you've read the messages, once you've heard her moan his name, you see everything differently. He reached for her elbow once when she laughed. She pulled away barely, just enough to maintain deniability. She was good, damn good, but I was better. That night, I began phase 2, isolation. I started talking to her less, made excuses, claimed stress at work, piled unbelievable fatigue. She tried harder, massaging my shoulders, initiating sex more frequently, asking questions she used to forget to ask. I let her. The goal was to make her feel guilty, conflicted, get her to need me again, because the more she craved my approval, the harder the fall would hit. I fed her just enough warmth to keep her hoping, while I stripped away her life piece by piece behind her back. The kids were the next piece of the puzzle. I didn't want them caught in the crossfire, so I started spending more time with them, solo. Movie nights, school runs, baking cookies. I volunteered at their school once a week. Slowly, subtly, I became the default parent. When I spoke to the family attorney, she said, if this goes to court, this groundwork will win you full custody. That wasn't a threat to Caroline yet, but soon it would be. I wasn't going to just expose her. I was going to make her choose between him and everything else. I started redirecting our finances next. Quietly, legally. I shifted funds from our joint accounts into a trust for the kids, bulletproof from division and divorce. I changed the deed on the house, which was solely in my name, moving it under a shell company I'd established through a friend. If she checked the title now, she'd still see my name. But if she tried to claim it later, she'd find a corporate firewall. The account for her raise at work? I flagged it to her company's HR anonymously. I knew they'd open an internal audit soon. That would simmer beneath the surface until it boiled over. And then came the final setup, the confrontation blueprint. Monday morning, she'd receive an envelope at work. Inside, a transcript of her texts with Mason, a photo of the two of them from the hallway cam, arms around each other, a copy of the lease she signed in her maiden name, a printed spreadsheet showing her raise to Mason with red circles around the dates. And finally, a simple note: "You have until Friday to tell me everything, or I will." No name, no return address. I wouldn't speak to her about it. I'd let her unravel in silence. Let her sweat. Because when people panic, they make mistakes. And I needed hers to be public. Back home that night, she was humming again, cooking pasta, wearing the soft gray shirt I once told her was my favorite. I watched her from the hallway, like watching an actress on stage, rehearsing lines for a play I'd already seen 100 times. She looked up and smiled. "You okay?" she asked. "Just tired," I said, returning the smile. Crazy day. She opened it at 10:03 a.m. on a Monday. I know this because the internal security cameras at her office caught her reaction. Wide eyes, fingers trembling just enough to rattle the pages as she turned them. Her posture slumped halfway through the stack. And when she got to the last page, the one with the note, she didn't flinch. She froze, the way prey freezes when it realizes it's already been hunted. 10 minutes later, she was in the restroom. Another camera caught that. She stared at herself in the mirror for a full 2 minutes, like if she just looked hard enough, she'd find a version of herself that could fix this. Maybe rewind the tape. Maybe lie her way out. Good luck, sweetheart. She returned to her desk, messaged someone, then picked up her phone and texted me. "Hey babe, everything okay? Just thinking about you." It would have been touching if I hadn't just watched her panic sweat through her blouse. I didn't reply. Let her feel it. That evening, she came home early. Earlier than usual. Tried to play casual, but her game was off. Too many glances my way. Too many "I love yous" that sounded like last rites. I pretended not to notice. "Dinner smells good," I offered, settling at the table. "I wanted tonight to be special," she said, setting the table with the good plates. "We haven't really connected lately." I almost laughed. Connected. She'd been connecting all right, 3 times a week with a kid who barely shaves. Instead, I played along, ate her lemon chicken, complimented it, talked about work. She kept waiting for me to bring it up, but I didn't. She couldn't take it. Around 9 o'clock, the kids were in bed, and she followed me into the study. Her eyes were glassy, like she'd rehearsed this conversation all afternoon. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I closed my laptop, turned to her, nodded. "Sure." She sat on the edge of the desk like she used to when we were younger. Tried to make herself small, girlish, harmless. "I haven't been honest with you," she started. "About some things at work. With Mason." She said his name like it was a splinter in her throat. I didn't mean for anything to happen. It started when things got so crazy. I was stressed. You were busy. He was just there. I stared at her. No interruptions. No nods of sympathy. She went on. "We kissed. A few times. And, yes, we slept together. But it didn't mean—" "Stop." My voice was low, calm. Steel undervelvet. She blinked. Tears welled up. The performance began. "Please, I said stop." I stood, walked past her to the window. Looked out. "You're not sorry it happened. You're sorry I found out." That shut her up. I turned back to her, slowly. "You're going to pack a bag," I said evenly. "Tonight. You'll leave. I've already spoken to the lawyer. Divorce papers are being prepared. You'll get them by Friday." She shook her head, stunned. "Gary, wait, we can fix this. We have a family." "No," I said. "I have a family. You had a secret. That landed." "But what about the kids?" she pleaded, stepping closer. "They love us. Don't do this to them. Don't use them now. You already did that enough sneaking around during school pickups." She gasped, realizing just how much I knew. The timeline, the location, the code on the lock. She sat down, finally quiet. I let the silence stretch. You think I'm overreacting, I said. But you don't know the half of it yet. What does that mean? She whispered. I leaned forward, locked eyes with her. You'll find out on Friday. She didn't sleep that night. I heard the restless pacing from the guest room. I slept like a stone. Because now, she wasn't just caught. She was cornered. And Friday? That's when I dropped the second envelope. The one that ends her career. She left Thursday morning wearing the same blouse she'd worn the day I saw her with Mason. Maybe it was unintentional. Maybe not. But that shade of soft blue, it looked different now. Like a bruise. I watched her leave from the upstairs window. No kiss. No love you. Not even the fake one she used to toss over her shoulder like spare change. The kids were still asleep. The house was silent. But inside me, there was a storm. Because Friday wasn't just for her. It was for him, too. Mason Delaney, 27, marketing underachiever, mattress Olympian, and soon-to-be unemployed. I'd done my research, found his apartment, his gym, even his favorite bar. But more importantly, I found his Achilles heel. He was on contract. No union protection. No HR safety net. And his manager, Caroline, had violated 3 separate company policies by sleeping with a subordinate, approving him a raise without peer review, and signing off on expenses tied to their little love nest. It wasn't just unethical. It was actionable. Friday, 9 a.m., 3 packages were delivered. To Caroline, the formal divorce petition, a letter from my attorney, a breakdown of custody claims, a notice of financial partition, explaining that our joint savings had been split with my portion already protected in trust for the kids. To her company's HR department, a manila envelope with documents, financial records, screenshots of texts, a signed lease, and internal emails tying her to Mason's raise. I signed it anonymously. Didn't need the credit. To Mason, a smaller envelope with a single typed letter. You didn't just sleep with your boss. You took what wasn't yours. You've got 48 hours to resign and disappear. If you don't, the next letter goes to your board. Simple. Direct. No threats. Just clarity. By 10:42 a.m., I had a voicemail from Caroline. Sobbing. Half breathless. Rambling apologies and we can still talk desperation. I didn't call her back. By 11:08 a.m., I got an email from her company. A confirmation that her access was suspended pending internal review. By noon, Mason went dark. Social scrubbed. Phone disconnected. He was smart enough to know when he'd been checkmated. I spent the rest of Friday taking the kids to the zoo, watching them laugh at monkeys, eating overpriced cotton candy, and wondering, how long would I lie to them? When you tell a 5-year-old that the woman who birthed him betrayed the man who raised him, you don't. Not yet. You just hold their hand and keep them safe. That's the job. When we got home, Caroline's car was gone. So were half the clothes from the guest room closet. She'd left her wedding ring on the kitchen table. Cliché. Predictable. She texted me that night. I don't know how it came to this. I lost track of who I was. I never stopped loving you. Please believe that. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Love isn't enough when respect dies. And trust doesn't get resuscitated. It gets buried. The next morning, I found something unexpected. In the closet, buried beneath a stack of her old workout gear, was a shoebox I hadn't seen before. Inside, photos. Dozens. Some of us. Some of the kids. And a few of him. Mason. Candid ones. Lazy smiles. Hotel room selfies. A private life developed in 4x6 gloss. And at the bottom of the box, a note. Handwritten. Torn from a journal. Just one line. If Gary ever finds out, I'll lose everything. But I can't stop. I stared at that sentence for a long time. She knew. Every time she kissed me goodnight. Every school play. Every dinner we ate together as a family. She knew the risk. And she did anyway. That was when the grief hit. Not rage. Not revenge. Grief. Because that's what betrayal is. A death. A quiet funeral for a life you thought was real. But I wasn't done yet. Because I'd taken her job. Taken her lover. Now it was time to take her story. I wasn't going to let her twist it. Wasn't going to let her friends hear some sanitized version of events where she was just lost or unhappy. No, I was going to make sure they knew exactly what she'd done. She thought she could control the narrative. Caroline always had a way of making herself the misunderstood victim, spinning tales of pressure, fatigue, how things just got so crazy. I could already hear it. I made a mistake. I wasn't feeling seen. It wasn't who I am. But that's the thing about masks. They crack when the light hits them. And I was about to flood her world with light. It started small. A text to her sister, Sarah, who always thought I was the problem, who once told me, "You're lucky to have a woman like Caroline." I sent her a single message. "You should ask your sister about Mason. Start with the lease at 418 Mayfield Terrace. Then ask her how long she's been on the pill." She responded 30 minutes later. "What are you talking about?" I didn't reply, because I knew Caroline would. She'd get ahead of it. Spin it. That's why I sent the photos next. 4 of them, carefully chosen. Nothing obscene, just undeniable. Her on the couch with Mason's head in her lap. Her kissing his temple. Her handwriting on the lease agreement. The pill strip time-stamped. Within an hour, I got another message from Sarah. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Another mask shattered. Next came the group chat. You know the one. That sacred circle of trust shared by couples. Friends from college, 2 of whom were at our wedding. I waited until Saturday night, right after dinner, when I knew most of them would be winding down, phone in hand. I dropped in a simple message. "Hey guys, sorry for going dark. Just wanted to let you all know Caroline and I are separating. You'll probably hear her version soon. Here's mine." Then I attached a PDF. The timeline, 9 months of lies. Inside, it laid out everything. The burner phone, the lease, the word conflict of interest, screenshots of texts, the DNA test results. Yes, I included those too. No commentary, no vengeance, just truth. By Sunday morning, 3 of the 4 wives had texted me privately, all of them shocked. 2 confessed they'd suspected something but never said anything. One of the husbands, Eric, called me in tears. "Jesus, Gary, I had no idea. I feel like an idiot." "Don't," I said. "You weren't the one sleeping with someone half your age in a rental property while lying to your kids." I didn't post it publicly. That wasn't the play. Public shame makes people sympathetic. But private shame? That's personal. That spreads. That sticks. Her coworkers? I didn't need to do a thing. HR did it for me. By Monday, Caroline had been placed on unpaid leave pending investigation. By Wednesday, Mason had formally resigned. Her inbox, empty. Her Slack, muted. Her chair, cold. She called me, left a voicemail. I didn't answer. She begged to talk in person. Said she wanted to explain. What was left to explain? That she wanted excitement? Intimacy? Adventure? She could have asked me for those things. Instead, she found them in a junior employee and a second phone. The only time I responded was with a single text. "Your version of the story is over. Mine just started." The next weekend, I met with a ghostwriter. Not for a book, for a statement. Legal but personal. Emotional but sharp. I planned to release it only if she tried to smear me, play victim, or use the kids as leverage. And she would. Eventually. People like her don't go quietly. But by then, my traps would already be set. My final move? I met with Mason's next employer. He didn't know I knew about the interview he had scheduled. My contact at the firm was more than willing to hear me out. I handed over a sealed envelope and said, "You can hire him. Just know who you're bringing on board. He's not a criminal, but he's not a man you want representing your brand." I left it at that. They didn't hire him. By Monday morning, Caroline's world had shrunk. The house? Legally mine. The kids? Already attached to my routine. The career? Crumbling. The affair? Ghosted. She was left with the one thing she had tried so hard to avoid. Herself. And yet, I didn't feel finished. There was one more choice to make. What I do with the kids now that I know they're not mine. You'd think the hardest part was catching her, or exposing her, or watching her world burn down to ash while I stood just far enough away not to feel the heat. But no, the hardest part came afterward, sitting in a quiet house, staring at 2 sleeping children in their beds, and realizing they're not mine, not by blood, not by biology, but by something far more fragile, love. James was 6, Sonia 4. They both had Caroline's eyes, her mannerisms, and somewhere in that tangle of DNA and deception, There was another man's blood running through their veins. Mason's blood, or maybe someone else's. There was still that lingering question. How long had this been going on? But I didn't want to chase that timeline anymore. At some point, the origin of the fire stops mattering when everything's already burned. What mattered was them. Sonia had drawn me a picture the day before. Me, holding her hand, with hearts in the sky. Why the hearts? I asked. Because you're the love daddy. Not a love daddy. The love daddy. I sat on the edge of her bed that night, the picture still folded in my pocket, and I felt it. What most men never admit aloud. I didn't want to give them up, even if they weren't mine. Even if every day with them would be a reminder of what Caroline stole from me. A lie in the shape of a family photo. But what are you supposed to do? Drop them off like borrowed tools? Tell them, sorry kids, you're the fallout of your mother's affair. I'm going to go rebuild alone. Maybe some men could do that. I couldn't. I didn't create them. But I raised them. And no DNA test could erase the hours I spent rocking James to sleep when his night terrors woke the house. Or the way Sonia said, Daddy, like it was a shield word, something that kept the monsters away. So I made the choice. My lawyer looked at me, surprised when I said it out loud. I want full custody of both of them. I'll sign whatever I have to. File whatever motions. You understand, he said cautiously. If you're not the biological father, you're under no legal obligation to support them. And the court might not grant you standing if she contests it. She won't contest it, I said, and I was right. When the papers arrived, Caroline didn't fight. She didn't even call. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe she knew those kids were never hers the way they were mine. 3 months later, the house was ours. Mine and theirs. The guest room, once Caroline's exile, became a playroom. I repainted the walls myself. The burner phone stayed in my desk drawer as a reminder. The footage, the photos, the texts, they stayed too. Not for revenge. Not anymore. For clarity. Because the world has a way of rewriting stories when time dulls the blade. But I wasn't going to let that happen. One night, months later, Sonia climbed into my lap with a sleepy look and asked, Daddy, why doesn't Mommy come home anymore? I paused, then answered honestly, but gently. Because she forgot how to be kind. Sonia nodded like that, made perfect sense. Will you forget? No, sweetheart, I said, pulling her close. I remember everything. And that's the end of her story. Mine? It's still being written. But this time, I'm the only author.